Imagine having the ability to open an app, request a ride, and get to your destination, all by using your smartphone. Okay, that might sound just like Uber or Lyft, but instead of a car, what if that app ordered a private jet to take you anywhere in the world? The private aviation industry isn't just for the mega wealthy anymore. And despite its proliferation in pop culture as something reserved for pop stars and billionaire CEOs, through programs like fractional jet ownership, jet cards, and various mergers and acquisitions throughout the industry, flying private is more popular and more accessible than ever. Let's be honest, there's a pretty small market for people willing to shell out millions of dollars for a private jet, probably the same one or two people who in recent days have rocketed themselves into space. The private aviation industry was aware of this, and for years, companies have been heading towards a more egalitarian model of private flight. Today, we're going to take you through the world of private aviation, from where it started to where we are today, and where the industry is headed. With this base of knowledge, you'll have a better understanding of present and future opportunities when it comes to you and your business. The history of private aviation and the aviation industry as a whole really took off, sorry for the flight pun, after World War I. Following the war, there were tons of propeller planes that no longer had any use, except for doing some crazy air acrobatics that often didn't end well. It wasn't until the 1930s when airplanes began to be used by CEOs for business trips. In fact, all the way back in 1929, Harry L. Ogg, the president of Automatic Washer Company, outfitted his aircraft with a dictation machine, a typewriter, a desk, and was even accompanied by an aerial secretary. Just trying to see how many old-timey phrases I could fit in one sentence. It wasn't until the 1960s when the private aviation industry started really heating up. In 1963, the Learjet 23, the world's first airplane built specifically for private owners, was put on the market. Though many different companies would eventually enter the space, Learjet truly revolutionized the industry, creating a whole new market for small, efficient private aircraft. Through the 1960s and 1970s, more and more aviation companies began developing private planes, including Embraer, Gulfstream, and Boeing. They continued to gain in popularity to the point where in 1980, the first airport dedicated specifically to private airplanes opened in Paris. And though private jets were becoming more and more popular, they really only focused on two markets: the extremely wealthy and the leaders of large private corporations. So basically two types of uber wealthy people. Planes were owned outright, which made for a very small client base. But NetJets, a private aviation company that still operates today, pioneered this idea of fractional ownership, meaning you own a fraction of a plane along with other fractional owners. As the technology for private jets improved, the options for using private jets have increased exponentially. In fact, purchasing a private plane outright constitutes for a very small part of the industry. Let's say tomorrow you decide you want to take a private jet from JFK all the way to JFK, just for fun. Where would you even start looking? Well, the private aviation market now has four main options for booking a private jet and taking yourself anywhere you want. The most traditional option is to charter a flight, which essentially means renting a private plane from an owner or company. Flight chartering is a massive industry in and of itself. And with so many charter options available, a private jet broker is often used to guide you along the way. Jet brokers are in touch with a wide variety of companies and private owners. And having access to these relationships can be hugely helpful in finding the right flight. After all, it's all about who you know. Smaller local operations include fixed fleet operators, which fly regionally and charter a designated route that can be booked by trip. Another option, which we touched on earlier, is fractional ownership. You can picture this like a timeshare, where clients buy a share of yearly flight hours, in addition to owning a share of the craft itself. Fractional ownership can also refer to owning a fraction of a fleet of aircraft rather than just one. The newest way to book a private jet is through jet cards. Think of this like a prepaid card that holds a certain amount of flight hours. Members call up the jet card service and request their trip, which can usually be accommodated within 4 hours. Then these hours are deducted based on the length of their trip. Though these are the 4 main types of private travel, new services are being introduced to the market every day, offering various combinations of these options as well as membership plans to suit the client's needs. This expansion often means lower tier services, increasing the market for those who may have never considered private flight before. Because of this variety and the industry's expansion, we're seeing a lot of activity in recent years when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. Lower cost options like jet cards have already fueled, last pun, I promise, an increase in mergers and acquisitions and fundraising. But the pandemic threw the market into hyperdrive. In March of 2020, when the world basically stopped, the commercial airline industry and the private aviation industry tanked alongside with it. However, people who still needed to travel saw private flights as a much safer option. In fact, after a complete stop, the industry has actually grown by 5 to 10% from its pre-pandemic levels. Private aviation as an industry is currently particularly well suited to mergers and acquisitions due to the fragmentation of the market. Let me explain. When it comes to commercial airlines, 4 companies hold almost 70% of the market. In comparison, the 25 largest charter flight operators only control 35% of the market. The industry was already primed for mergers and acquisition activity, and the current growth is only increasing those possibilities. In 2019, Vista Global, a Dubai-based jet charter company, expanded their fleet by acquiring JetSmarter and XLJet, combining them into Simply XL. This enabled customers to book single seats on charter flights. Companies are also merging in order to combine services for a more complete experience. Directional Aviation's One Sky Flight acquired PrivateFly, one of the biggest private charter booking apps on the market, thereby creating a premium jet broker service. New York-based private charter company, Wheels Up, is responsible for perhaps the biggest growth in the industry in the past few years. After purchasing Delta Private Jets, Gamma Aviation Signature, and TMC Jet, Wheels Up grew to be the 2nd largest operator of private jets in the country. But that was just the beginning. Recently, through a SPAC merger, Wheels Up became the first private aviation company to go public, with a more than $2 billion valuation. Because of record growth and increased markets, the future of private aviation has never been brighter. The industry has always held flexibility and reliability as a hallmark of the decision to go private. However, an important addition to this list is now safety and security. With far less exposure to COVID inherent in private flights, with that growth, the possibilities for mergers and acquisitions are plentiful from within the industry, as we've seen in the past few years, but also from outside the industry. Analysts at VistaJet have concluded that strategic partnerships that link private aviation with luxury hospitality and leisure may provide key advantages for broadening the customer base as well as mitigating any negative effects of future travel restrictions by creating end-to-end service. Not only are there boundless business possibilities, but the technology used in private planes is changing rapidly. This includes jets that use biofuel, reducing emissions, and hopefully, in time, lower fuel costs. There is also currently a big push to incorporate AI into private flight experiences, giving planes the ability to predict, adapt, and plan for the best flight possible and the best possible experience for the passenger. The private aviation industry is going through a renaissance, making for one of the hottest mergers and acquisitions markets around. To learn more about other industries, as well as gain a deeper understanding of their M&A markets, like, comment, and click subscribe below, and make sure to follow us on Instagram. The markets are always shifting. We're here to tell you how we got to this point and to give you tips on where we're going. See you next time, and as always, stay golden, champs.